The first thing you notice is the heavy pull on your wrists. The second is the drifting smoke. The third is the chilling certainty that your life is no longer your own. You are only 17, still dressed in the clothes you slept in. As they haul you across the damp sand toward the tide, you realize your village is gone. It wasn't just conquered, it was erased from existence. The men holding you captive do not speak your tongue. Their voices sound like low growls, and their laughter like predators celebrating a simple kill. You do not know their words, but you understand their intent. They do not view you as a human being. The vessel waiting on the shore looks almost alive. It is long and narrow, its wooden frame stained by salt and dried blood. A carved dragon's head watches from the front with empty eyes. You don't wait for them to push you. Your legs are trembling too much to stand, and you collapse to your knees. A single tear falls down your face. They only laugh harder. To your left, a woman tries to escape. A Viking hits her with the flat side of his axe, and she drops instantly. To your right, a child wails for his mother, but no one comes. Everything moves with terrifying speed. Too fast to process, too fast to even pray. All you can understand is this: you are now loot, a product, someone's future income. As the boat pulls away from the beach and your home becomes a tiny speck on the horizon, you learn a dark truth. The Vikings didn't just come for gold. They came for people. If these stories matter to you, please like and subscribe. Now, we continue. Before the ship even reaches deep water, you have been swallowed by a machine. It is a system that lived long before you and will last long after you are gone. For the Vikings, slavery was not a side effect of war or a tragic accident. It was the entire business model. Every raid, every torching of a village, and every woman stolen from her family followed a cold, hard logic. Captives were worth more than precious metals. The men who took you weren't acting on raw impulse. They were investors. A leader gathered partners, warriors, landholders, and traders to fund the trip. They paid for the wood, the iron bolts, the wool for the sails, and the food for the journey. A single ship cost more wealth than your whole community could earn in a lifetime. The timber alone required cutting down dozens of old oak trees. The iron rivets had to be hammered by expert smiths over many weeks. The sail cost as much as a small farm, and the crew of 40 men expected to be paid well. Because the investment was so high, the profit had to be certain. Humans were the most reliable investment. Gold can be spent and silver can be lost, but a person can be sold today, worked tomorrow, and forced to produce more labor later. A person cannot fight back in a courtroom or refuse an order. A healthy young woman could be traded for the price of 10 cows, more wealth than most families would see in 5 years. A ship with 20 captives was a fortune that could buy land and power for a generation. The math was easy. To them, you were the perfect asset. The ships were built specifically for hunting humans. Their shallow design allowed them to sail up rivers that no one thought were reachable. A town far inland could wake up to find Vikings at their door with no warning. There was nowhere to hide. Old records describe them coming from the sea like hungry wolves. What they couldn't carry away, they burned. But what they wanted most was women. Young women fetched the highest prices because they lasted longest at hard labor and could produce the next generation of servants. Every girl captured was a walking bank account. Some were kept for chores, some for worse, and others were sold across thousands of miles, from Ireland to Scandinavia, and from there to distant Eastern markets. Your entire future was now just a line in their economy. You weren't a tragedy, you were a return on investment. Not everyone taken shared the same end. The Vikings knew exactly who they wanted. As your ship joins others, you see the way they look at you. It is a practiced transactional gaze. They are checking you over the way a farmer looks at a horse, efficiently and without any pity. During a raid, they always hit the easy targets first. Lonely farms and monasteries where people fled for safety. But the real prize wasn't the silver on the altar, it was the people inside. They took the young and the strong who could follow orders. The elderly were seen as useless, and mothers with infants only slowed them down. Many were killed on the spot to save time, but you were kept apart. You remember the rough hand grabbing your arm and your mother's voice fading as they dragged you away. This wasn't about hate, it was about accounting. Your age meant years of work, and your body meant endurance. Some women were sent to farms in the north, while others were sent to the great slave markets in the east. All of you shared the same beginning, forced silence and the loss of everything you knew. You see a boy crying as he is torn from his sister. You see a mother reaching for her daughter until she is kicked away like trash. This brutality wasn't messy, it was organized. They weren't just taking people, they were sorting through merchandise. The real journey starts with the sound of creaking wood and the feeling of wet ropes tightening around your arms. You are forced to sit on the floor of the boat between the men rowing. There is no room to stretch or lie down. You can barely breathe. Your clothes are soaked by the cold spray of the sea, and your teeth won't stop chattering. When a woman next to you gets sick, a Viking pushes her aside with his boot as if he were moving a heavy sack. Hour after hour, the ship moves. Every splash of the oars vibrates through your bones. Your world is now just the rhythm of wood and water. Food is rare, and most of it goes to the men doing the work. They toss you damp scraps or hard crusts. You learn to eat quickly or go hungry. At night, the cold is sharp as a knife. You try to huddle for warmth, but the chains keep you apart. Your fingers go numb and your lips bleed. When a storm hits, the fear is overwhelming. The ship tosses violently, and waves pour over the sides. You have to grab onto whatever you can find, slimy ropes or someone else's arm. If a girl slips toward the edge, a warrior grabs her by the ankle, not out of kindness, but to protect his property. He ties her so tightly the rope cuts into her skin. Some women faint and some never wake up. When someone dies, they don't stop. They simply toss the body into the waves and keep moving. The worst times are when the rowing stops for inspection. They use torches to look at your faces and check your health. They note who is getting weak and who is sick. You realize that being noticed is often more dangerous than being ignored, so you try to become invisible. When you finally see land, you hope for relief, but what waits for you is worse. It is a market filled with noise, sweat, and misery. Traders shout and argue over costs. The smell of rotting fish and smoke is everywhere. Your feet hit the wooden pier, and you almost fall. You are herded into a line, and the ropes are replaced by heavy iron chains. The weight is a constant reminder that you are no longer a person. A crowd gathers to watch. Men walk by and poke at you with no emotion. They talk about your body as if you aren't there. If a woman tries to hide herself, she is struck for slowing down the sail. Prices change based on strength and age. Some buyers are looking for farm help, while others are middle, men taking stock to even bigger cities. You realize you will never see the other women from the ship again. A man points at you, a price is agreed upon, and your chain is yanked. In a single moment, your life changes forever. You have been sold. The house you are taken to is dark and filled with the smell of old smoke. The fire in the middle never goes out because there is always work to be done. You have no bed and no corner of your own. You sleep on the floor on a rough scrap of fabric. Your day starts long before the sun is up. Your hands become raw and bloody from grinding grain with a heavy stone. Your back feels like it will never be straight again. Then you carry endless buckets of water from icy streams and drag logs that are too heavy for your frame. You clean ash, wash clothes in freezing water, and mend fabric until your eyes ache. You cook meals that you are barely allowed to taste, eating only the cold scraps that the family rejects. You do not speak unless you are told to. The free women of the house watch you with cold eyes. To them, You are just a tool that makes their lives easier. At night, as you huddle by the dying fire, you realize you aren't trapped by bars. You are trapped by the fact that you have nowhere to go and no one to turn to. You no longer belong to yourself. There are nights when the house is so quiet it feels heavy. Every slave girl knows to keep her head down and hope her name isn't called. In this world, there were no laws to protect you. A slave's body belonged to the master to use however he wanted. The master's wife knew this, and it made the air thick with tension. She didn't see you as a human, she saw you as a threat to her status. If a slave girl became pregnant, everything changed. The child would have the master's blood but would still be a servant. Some men might free such a child, but many left them in chains. The wife's bitterness would only grow, and the other slaves would stay away from you to avoid the trouble. Motherhood wasn't a joy, it was a dangerous gamble. You owned nothing, not even your own children. Not every story ends with old age. Some ended with violence or ritual. A small mistake could lead to a beating because a slave's pain cost the master nothing. But there was a darker path: sacrifice. When a powerful leader died, he was often buried with his wealth, including people. A slave girl might be chosen to follow him into the grave. She would be dressed in fine clothes and given strong drink to cloud her mind. For 10 days, she would be treated well, knowing she was being prepared for death. On the final day, she would be led to the burial ship. While the village sang and beat drums to drown out her cries, she would be killed so she could serve her master in the next world. Other times, the end was simply being sold again and again until your body gave out. From the frozen north to the distant heat of the east, the chains stayed the same. Most women disappeared like a candle blowing out, quietly and without a name. We often remember the Vikings as brave explorers and heroes of old stories. But no culture is just made of the men with swords. It is also built by those who were silenced. If you look past the myths, you see the women who never went home. Their hands made the sails that moved the ships. Their labor kept the farms running. Their bodies are part of the history of the world, even if their names were never written down. No one wrote poems for them, and no stones were carved in their honor. Their stories are hidden in old bones and the DNA of people living today. When you see the truth, the Viking Age looks less like a legend and more like a harsh reality. It wasn't built on glory, it was built on the backs of people who were stolen and forgotten. Remembering them now is a small way to give them the justice they never had. If this story moved you, please subscribe. Here, we look at the parts of history that are often left in the shadows. There are many more truths yet to be told.